Hello and welcome to all of our Next Gen friends. My name is Megan Pleasant and I am the Marketing and Communications Specialist here at GovLoop. If you're just coming back from the lunch keynote, I hope you got a chance to grab something to eat and get a good stretch in because we definitely have some great content this afternoon that we don't want you to miss. So let's get to it. Are you bracing for an important conversation at work and you feel a little nervous? You might not be clear, or you might get a little talked over, or you may have to share some difficult information on behalf of your agency. Figuring out how to have challenging conversations in a safe, equitable, and constructive way is so essential to having a healthy workplace. Today, our expert will explore the communication skills needed to have difficult conversations rather than avoid them, because that's not healthy either. But first, we have a few housekeeping items to go over. If you're on Twitter, we would love to know what you've learned throughout this session and from any other session that you've attended. So use the hashtag NextGenGov to share your takeaways. We also have some great additional resources available for you to download on the right-hand side of your console. That includes the slides that you will be seeing in this presentation. And we've got some other stuff in there for you, so definitely check that out. If you have technical difficulties, we hope you don't, but if you do, send a message to that Q&A portal so we can get somebody on there to help you out. And in that same Q&A portal, we'll have a chance for you to ask our expert questions. So don't be shy, drop those in. We want to hear from you. And this is an interactive session, so you're welcome to do that. We also have the open chat that's available for you to interact with your fellow Govies and peers. So feel free to throw some words in there as well. If you missed a few things, that's totally fine. We will email you a link directly to the entire event tomorrow so you can rewatch it and take notes and get all you can out of these amazing sessions. So let's go on to our CPE information real quick. We are giving out 1 CPE credit for your participation in today's session. There are just 3 simple things that you need to do. You need to stay and participate for the whole session. You need to take all of the polls, and you need to fill out the post-event CPE evaluation to obtain your credit. Don't forget to do any of those if you want your credit. You can find the evaluation in the resource module on the console or at the Resource Center in the main environment. All CPEs will be emailed directly to you once we confirm you have met all the requirements. So do those 3 simple things and you're good to go. So let's move on to that. All that housekeeping's out of the way. So let's talk about Mel. Let's just talk about you, Mel. You're the Senior Consultant Management Advisory Services at LMI, and we're so excited to have you here. I know that you are going to share a wealth of valuable information, so I'm going to hand things right over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm Mel Kepler, and I'm going to be leading the conversation today. If you have questions that you specifically want me to answer, go ahead and throw those in the Q&A to make sure the team can see them. But one of the things I want you to remember is there's 144 attendees last time I refreshed, and part of what you get from a conference isn't just the content, but your peers, the other people who are there. And that's no less true because this is virtual. So put your thoughts in the chat. If I bring something up and you've dealt with that situation and you have an interesting take or a piece of advice, throw that in the chat. You don't know who might need it. You all are resources for each other. And also, on a personal note, LMI, the company that I work for, does a lot of work. We serve all forms of government, but we do a lot of work with federal. So it's always very exciting for me to come work with GovLoop and NextGen and get to see state and local too. So shout out to all the public libraries I see there. Y'all holding it up. I love all of the indigenous nations that I see on there. Local government, man, you guys are really holding up the sky there. So I appreciate it. And thank you for having me here. So critical conversations. We're actually going to start with a quiz. And as was mentioned, taking these quizzes is part of what gets you CPE here. So really do weigh in. Did I launch that correctly? Please tell me from my team if I didn't. But first question, which types of critical conversations have you faced in the workplace? And go ahead and count it, whether you're the one who had to initiate them or whether you were part of that. Someone came up and decided to offer you constructive feedback or came to talk to you about a decision that they knew would disappoint you. We're going to leave this up for about a minute to make sure that everyone gets a chance to take it. But this will really help us focus and talk about, make sure the kinds of things that we discuss today will be useful to the people actually in the room. We kind of plan these sessions in a vacuum, and then, we want to actually help the real people who show up. So that's the goal. How are we doing as far as responses to the poll there?
We have about 25% of folks who have responded so far, so we can leave this up.
Go ahead. You can choose more than one, choose as many as apply, but any parts of critical conversations you've been a part of. And because, we can't write every single kind of critical conversation in one poll, if there's something on there or there's something that isn't in the poll that you have been part of that you've considered a critical conversation, drop that in the chat.
We're getting there. We're about 60% of folks. So
that's good. Good work, y'all. Okay, let's take another 10 seconds. Finish up your responses if you haven't gotten to respond yet.
Well, I haven't seen any alternate answers, so I think a lot of people
are reasonable accommodations. That's another one. Yeah, that's a good idea. So asking for it, telling someone that they can't have what they need or that they can have what they need, and that path to it is maybe harder than they thought, terminating someone's employment, pay gaps, new management, either talking to someone who is new in management, being new management and coming into a situation that's fraught for reasons that you weren't involved with. It's always fun to inherit someone else's crisis situation there. All right, let's display. Let's see what we've got here. If I just go to the next one, will that work? Oh, it will. Yay. Okay. Interpretation of statute, negotiating pay also came up there. Pay, a big theme in the chat there. So speaking up in a meeting with new information or with a new viewpoint, it seems like everybody kind of seems like this is a good idea and you just know it isn't, but no one else is saying it. And now you got to be the guy. Providing constructive feedback to a coworker, addressing inappropriate behavior. These are all the things I'm reading right now. Those three things are all more than half of you. More than half have dealt with these. Addressing inappropriate behavior, specifically in the hopes of trying to stop it. Oh, and I think what Kristen just put in the chat, addressing an unconscious bias that affects you, could absolutely fall partly under that. When we have, let's see, we've also got 61% saying, telling someone about a decision that will disappoint them. Hey, you didn't get promoted. Hey, your reasonable accommodation was denied. Escalating an issue due to inaction or insufficient response. So you did the first thing, you talked to your supervisor about a problem, but they didn't do anything, or what they didn't stop it, and now you have to go up. And then just below the 50% mark, but still 39%, almost 39% and 42%, explaining a low performance rating to an employee, like you think you're great, and your performance didn't match that, and I know this is gonna be hard for you to hear, or relaying difficult information on behalf of a group. Hey, we all voted and we didn't accept your proposal, and I am the one who has to tell you that. We in the chat, I even like this. Talking to management is always the hardest. They ask for feedback, but they do nothing about it. Okay, so let's get into this. Right? Because this is what I want to focus on today. Unpleasant conversations, important conversations, critical conversations, they have to happen, even when they're unpleasant. They let you as a person, your agency, your team align your goals, values, motivations, ideas. Here's why we're doing this. Here's what we're doing. Here's where we're going. Here's how we act. Conflict is inevitable in any human interaction. All relationships have some sort of conflict. If you have ever been hard on yourself for something you've done, even your relationship with yourself contains conflict. It's literally inevitable in human interactions. So it's good to how to manage it. It's good to know how to manage it constructively. If you don't handle issues poorly, if you don't handle issues well, if you handle them poorly, it causes damage that can be difficult or sometimes impossible to unpack. And I'm thinking back to someone writing new management too. Again, you come into the situation, you inherit someone else's poorly managed, poorly handled issues, but you already know that. There's not a person in here who thinks important conversations don't need to happen. None of you came to this situation going, I'm not sure if critical conversations need to happen, but I'm open to being convinced. When I talked to the next gen leadership and planning team about this session, we really hit on, we're like, oh, well, what do we want to talk about? And the vibe, the line that from Evelie Jarvis that really hit me was, the questions that we get usually at these are not, why is this important, but how do I do it? These conversations are important. I don't need to convince you of that. It's hard to have those conversations. It's time consuming. It's stressful. And sometimes it doesn't even work. One of those things that got more than half of you said, you talk to someone and then you still have to escalate the issue. I did the hard thing already. Why do I still have to escalate this? Sometimes, maybe more than sometimes, you don't want to have the critical conversation. So today, instead of talking about why you should, because it is my personal belief, you should. You know why. We're going to talk about how to do it anyway. Even though it's hard, it's not fun, it's stressful, it's time consuming, and it might not have the effect we want to. We're going to talk about how we're going to have that conversation anyway. There's one other thing to think about. As we go forward. I know you don't need me to tell you why you have these conversations, but think about this. Think about your time at work. I want you to think about something else, someone else who had a critical conversation that you knew about. You watched them tell a bully, hey, that's not appropriate. We don't act like that. You watched them say, oh my God, what did you just say? We don't use that term. You watched them say, it seems like everyone's on board with this, but I think this is a problem that we should look at. You watched them tell someone that they didn't get promoted, even though they knew that person would be. I would bet money that none of you had trouble thinking of someone. You've seen someone have a critical conversation and it's stuck with you. Even if that bully didn't stop bullying, the person wasn't okay with the outcome, you watched them have that conversation, and the fact that they tried mattered. That's another reason that we're going to have these conversations, even though it stinks sometimes, honestly. All right, so let's talk about this. Another quiz for you right up top before we even get into content. What do you do if you know a critical conversation is coming? Which of these behaviors, and I'm actually going to read them out loud because I just saw someone say the last video, just so that you can start thinking about these things while your video is coming back up so you can vote still. Did you avoid the topic or the person? Did you practice the conversation before you had it? Did you end up venting to colleagues, friends, or family? None of these are wrong, by the way, and none of these are excessive, are perfectly right. These are all just things humans do. Did you try to get someone else to have the conversation, maybe? Did you soften your message? And in retrospect, maybe you softened it too much. Did you worry so much about the conversation you ended up with physical symptoms? Your heart was racing, you had sweaty palms, you had headaches, you had stomach aches. Did you feel more emotional than you wanted to in a work environment? Did your voice get raised, or you ended up crying or shaking and you didn't want to feel like that at work? Did you become aggressive or inflexible in the hopes of keeping your message strong? You found it hard to adjust in other ways. And I would love if there's anything in the chat here. Oh, good, video working now. If there's anything in the chat that, or I'm sorry, drop anything in the chat that is something that you did knowing that a critical conversation was coming that really isn't covered here. There can be a lot of different responses and reactions that people can have to knowing that this is something that they feel they should do. How are we doing as far as responses from my tech side?
We're at 58%. So we're trucking along.
They're coming in hot. Excellent.
I love that. Practice the conversation beforehand. I think we've all had that moment in the shower where we're like, oh, I should have said such and such.
Yeah. Oh, I like getting advice from other people. That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and we got another one. Are there more options? So these are the options we have, but like engaged as needed without worry or pre-angst. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you don't need, sometimes having that critical conversation is not that stressful for you. Or you engaged and maybe, I'm a person who gets after nervous. I don't usually get like for this, I'm fine. And actually I've done next gen so many times that I'll probably still be fine. But for places that I haven't done before, I might afterwards feel all shaky, which is a really weird response. But led with positive feedback before corrective criticism. The only time you can get me aggressive at work is when you assign me blame that is not mine. Backing up your reaction with policy, writing down some of your key points. Jere, Jere, love that. That's a great, like, I'm going to write down my key points. Allowing your emotions of frustration spilling into other parts of the day. Like, who hasn't? Whomst? Who among us, right? Has not, I'm mad at this guy at work and I snapped at my cat, right? These happen. Consulting with legal counsel and a mentor, absolutely great idea. You ruminate. Depends on the person you're having that conversation with, absolutely. Oh, thank you, Jamie, another after nervous person. Were they upset? Did it go well? Can't concentrate on anything else until the conversation happens. It consumes my thoughts. What a good point, too. So maybe you don't dwell on it ahead of time, but you know if you don't do it, you're going to be useless until you do, until you address it. Should have said, the should have saids, absolutely. Do we feel like we've, 70%. I just realized I can see responses. So I'm going to go ahead and switch it to our answers. Practice the conversation beforehand. Good, 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 good. The next thing we're going to talk about is prep for how to have a difficult conversation. So practicing it beforehand, you're already on the right track. What else was above half? That is the number one, and that's great. That means the number one behavior that this group showed, 81%, is a very healthy behavior to prepare for this. Of course, it can get into obsessiveness when you practice, when it's all you think about, and that can be hard. More than half of you vented to colleagues and family, and I'm going to go ahead and say that's also healthy. It's probably not if Ashley and I work together, and we also work with Shannon, it's probably not healthy for me to vent to Shannon about my problems with Ashley because I may create more problems with Ashley in the workplace. But to go home and vent to my spouse, to vent to my friends, to go get coffee with my friend who works in another division and just vent about it, it's very healthy. It can help get some of that emotion out before you have to confront it. I like this. If you don't do something in the first 5 seconds, you probably won't act. James, I'm going to agree and disagree with you. I agree that is probably true for me as well. That's not true for everyone, but it's good to know about yourself. You know, if you don't do something now, you're not going to. Some people need to get out of the distress of the situation and armor themselves back up to go back into it. I agree with this as well for Diane too. I hate when the person doesn't listen to the question, just starts giving their answer before I've completed my question, which is 75% a different question. That is also one of my pet peeves. And if you answer a different question than I asked, I know you're not listening to me. Sometimes most of the time, Patricia, good point, you're not given time to practice or you don't know what's coming. Do you redo the conversation afterwards? Think of better ways to say it, replaying the entire conversation. That's a form of practicing beforehand, probably healthy. Practicing afterwards, probably not healthy. All right, what else do we have? Avoiding the topic of the person. Again, if you are avoiding it so you never have to have it, probably not gonna work. Avoiding it so you don't have to have it till you're ready, somewhat justifiable, right? So if you are avoiding this person because you have scheduled them for 2 o'clock this afternoon to have this conversation, go ahead and avoid it in the morning. If you need to prepare yourself. Give yourself time before you say something you might regret later, Jennifer. Right, absolutely. So if Jennifer jumps into those first 5 seconds, she can't trust herself to not say something she might regret. She needs that pause to be her best self. Whereas James and I, if we don't jump into those first 5 seconds, James, I don't want to put anything on you. James knows he won't do it. I know I will forget that it happened. Maybe softening your message too much, really a very common one. Having physical symptoms, heart racing, headaches, sweating, stomach ache, feeling more emotional than you want to in an environment. As being like, I'm worried that if I have this conversation with this person, I'm going to cry. And then they're not going to take me seriously. Ooh, this is a good tip for Kristen. Set a volume, keep that volume without change. That's powerful in 2 different ways. Number 1, it makes it seem less emotional to the person receiving the message. Number 2, it gives you something to focus on that isn't your feelings. I'm going to try to keep a soft voice throughout this presentation, throughout the feedback that I'm giving you, no matter what you say and no matter what I say. Becoming aggressive or inflexible and trying to get someone else to have the conversation, less common, but still reactions that people had. And again, hey, we are human beings. That's okay. That's okay. All right. So let's talk about getting ready. I want to acknowledge that you may not have time. You may have a moment where, boom, The time for the critical conversation is right now. Right now. How do you deal with a response you're not expecting at all? Selena, hold me to this. If I think that's in my later slides, if I don't get to it, come back to me and make sure I answer that. And actually for my moderators to make sure I answer that. And Laura, you're right. This is a human being that I am talking to. This is a human being that I'm talking to. All right. So preparing for a difficult conversation. This says describe, clarify, evaluate, acknowledge. I want you to do this to yourself in your head alone. You do not have to talk to the other person about any of these things if you don't want to. And in fact, sometimes that can be one of those things that leads to you getting defensive about the facts, which is a phrase I'm actually going to be stealing, Dolly. It can lead to you getting defensive about the facts, but having thought about all these things for yourself ahead of time, and again, this is a great time to bring in those distant colleagues, the family, the friends, to help you get your head on straight. So what has happened? What's happening? Why are we having this conversation? Has it happened before? So this is one way where you can prepare and have a pop-up, right? So oftentimes Jim Bob gets very defensive about being questioned in meetings, even when the questions are completely appropriate, and he bites someone's head off for asking a simple clarifying question. And he's done it a bunch. So you can prepare for next time he does it, I'm going to react within that 5-second window. I'm going to react right then in the meeting because that's the most appropriate time to do it. But I also know it might be coming because he's done it before. He might be doing it again. So how long has it been going on? What has the impact? What impact has the situation had on you and on others? Jim Bob, you're raising your voice again. Megan just asked a completely appropriate question. She's allowed to ask that question. I'm going to ask you to keep your tone civil. It's really disruptive to the meeting, and it makes it hard for people who don't have as much seniority as Megan to ask questions when you act like this. What do you really want out of this conversation? This is hard. So often we tell ourselves, I need to have this critical conversation, but we don't think about why. What do we want? Do we want them to change their behavior? Do we just want to lay down the line that it's inappropriate? Do we want to tell them that there will be a penalty for the action in the future? Sometimes it's just informational. One of the critical conversations you talk about is you didn't get your promotion, you didn't get your raise, you didn't get your reasonable accommodation. That's just information. You're just telling them what is happening. You don't necessarily need them to do anything differently based on that. Sometimes the point of the conversation is to relay information and to ask what they need then. And again, knowing some people like James and I are ready immediately to get, oh my God, I didn't get my reasonable accommodation. Here are 3 things I need. Some people you might say, okay, well, do you want to talk next week about what you might want to do now that you know that this isn't going to happen? What assumptions are you being made? Someone said earlier, this is a whole person here. What assumptions are you making about the people involved in their responses? Some things it's more cut and dry about assumptions. For example, my fictional Jim Bob who bites someone's head off every time they ask a question. Regardless of what's going on with Jim Bob's life, biting off a coworker's head verbally is never okay. That's not an okay behavior. Throwing a punch at a coworker, also not okay. There's no background, there's no context that makes that an appropriate response. But if you have one person and you need to give them the critical feedback that it's very hard to edit your documents because every time I make an edit, the document you give me back is so different from the first one that I have to make a bunch more edits. You're changing a bunch of stuff I'm not asking for. Making the assumption that they understand what you're editing. They understand what changes you're making and why. That they understand that the rest of the document is fine. It's just this that's being edited. Those are assumptions that you're making. And again, going into the, what did this, someone, I think it was James, you said, maybe they honestly don't know what they're doing is wrong. Oh my God. Okay, so when you edit part of my summary, you don't mean I need to rewrite the whole summary? Oh, thank God. So it doesn't always need to be a full fix, right? Sometimes it's just I want to be clear. I'm assuming you know X. Do you? And then acknowledge your own contributions. How have you been part of the situation? How have others contributed? Does Jim Bob snaps at everybody, but you know that they have been part of this team since Jimothy was the team lead, and the way he asked questions really was an attack on your character. So Jim Bob learned this behavior and got this behavior under a very toxic person. So going into this going, hey, you know, you really do end up being very aggressive and I need you to tone it down and be less defensive. We're allowed to ask questions. And then privately saying to him, like, Jimothy was a jerk and he treated you like a jerk. And you didn't deserve that. But, you know, Megan isn't Jimothy and she doesn't deserve the way she's being treated by you. How have you contributed? And this can be hard too, especially we're humans. We don't necessarily want to wade into, have we avoided tough conversations? Have we avoided giving critical feedback? Is this person already acting in a way that's counter to their natural tendencies because of other feedback that they've gotten either from you or from others on the team in the past, and they're in an unfamiliar environment and they overcorrect it? What is the level of trust? Does this person trust anybody? Do they trust nobody? Do they trust you when you're going into this difficult conversation? So again, we say, think about these things for yourself at least. Have these things clear in your head before you go into having this critical conversation. Absolutely. I'm going to go on to the next one and say, here is what you should settle before you have this conversation. If you get time to prepare, think about the timing. What day and time am I going to have this critical conversation? Again, sometimes the answer is right now, but sometimes you can schedule it ahead of time. Think about the other obligations. Do not schedule a critical conversation with someone if you can absolutely help it 25 minutes before they brief the senior leadership of your agency. Do not schedule it on their child's birthday while they are taking off to go to their child's birthday party later that day. Try to be cognizant of what is going on in that person's life and in your life as well. What other obligations do they have? Are they available? Don't schedule it between two other meetings for them if they're not going to have the time and they're really going to have to take time. Are they supposed to be writing something for you and you're taking part of their deadline time away to have this critical feedback? If it really needs to happen, it really needs to happen, but does it? Ask yourself and be very honest with yourself on that. As far as the message, again, this goes back to what did you want out of that conversation? Are you relaying information? Do you want them to behave a certain way? Do you want them to stop behaving a certain way? Are you asking for their input? Are you telling them about repercussions? Think about things you absolutely have to say. This is my message. If I say this, I'm done. I have coached clients in the past who were, I want to retire and I am scared that my supervisor will pressure me to stay on. So we talked about it, and the message, her must message was, I'm retiring at the end of June. And it's like, if you say that, then you can hang up. You can end the conversation whenever you want. As long as you said that, it doesn't matter if she agrees. It doesn't. If you've said that, your goal of the meeting is to say that. And then what won't you say? Megan has asked you not to bring her name up when you talk to Jim Bob about being critical to teammates. So you're not going to say, she's like, who complained about me? And not only, I'm not going to say Megan is very upset, but also redirects this last thing here. If he asks a question, the answer to which is on your don't say list, what are you going to say? That's not relevant to this conversation. Or this has been happening a while, Jim Bob. This isn't about any one specific time. Do not schedule at the beginning of the day. I like that. Do not schedule at the beginning of the day. And know your teammates. I've actually gone into situations where someone is, I ask people for what do your colleagues need to know about you to work well with you. And one person's like, I run out of juice after lunch. So if there's like an emotionally difficult conversation, schedule it in the morning. And another person was like, oh, really? I need some time to wake up and become my best self. So I prefer to have an emotionally difficult conversation in the afternoon. And so, yeah, knowing your person, like don't schedule it first thing. Let's see. I feel like there was another really good comment here. Ooh, Tasha, this is a good point. If they stonewall to meet, an approach could be to bring in a trusted facilitator. That's absolutely part of this timing. Also, like, what tools do you need? Do you need to write down your things in person? Do you need to call them so you can hang up if it gets aggressive? Do you need to have it in person? Do you want to bring in a facilitator? Oh my gosh. Called me up on my birthday and vacation 2 years in a row. Doesn't make you feel appreciated. Yep. Nope. That's gross. I'm going to go ahead and say. Any good tips for dealing with ageism? All right. This is a good point, actually, from James. Ageism, technically discrimination against older, not younger people. So someone cannot be ageist toward a young person, legally speaking. Just It's great. So think about next steps also. Before you start, want to know when, where you're going to have this conversation and why. You want to know what you're definitely going to say, what you're absolutely not going to say, and how you're going to redirect the conversation if we start veering into territory we don't want. You want to know what the next steps are. What do you want them to do next? So again, if it's disciplinary, say we're going to put you on a PIP and we'll meet a performance improvement plan, and we're going to meet next week to discuss the terms of that. Are you going to say, next time you do this behavior, XYZ will happen? Is it more of an information like, I'm so sorry, Megan, you did not get the promotion. Here are the reasons why. And then say, do you want some time to think before we talk about how we can help you now that this is the situation? What are the next steps for you, for the other people in the conversation? And when and how will those next steps be done? If you can clarify that as you speak to this person, that's going to be much clearer for everyone involved. And then think about recovery. Think about recovery. This is what I mean by that. What recovery should automatically happen? So this was a stressful conversation. I did not want to have it. It made me feel uncomfortable. Oh, Ashley, good point. I try to have this before lunch so everyone has a chance to get away and there's a logical end time. I love this. So an automatic recovery for Ashley there is we're all going to go to lunch and walk away from each other at the end. After this conversation, are you going to want to go take a walk? Are you going to want to walk away from this person? Are you going to want to take a deep breath? Are you going to want to talk to a friend or a loved one? What are you going to want to do no matter how it goes, just because that was stressful? If it goes well, if the conversation is a success, what kinds of recovery do you want? You might still have that adrenaline, right? The after nervous. So I talked to Jim Bob. I said he needs to stop biting people's heads off. I successfully kept him out of trying to blame this on Ashley. He acknowledged that he's still reacting to Jimothy, even though Jimothy retired 4 years ago. And we set up time to talk about positive things he could say, respond to questions. And it went really well. And he was very calm. And now I feel like I could kick the moon. What do I do? To have that time and space and think about what you're going to do if it goes well. And then what are you going to do if it didn't go well? If they stonewall you, if they don't listen, they get defensive, they want to push back on everything. They do that great thing that we all love where they don't listen to the actual question or statement you're making and instead respond to something slightly different. How are you going to give yourself some recovery time before you think about what is next? What do you do next? Another thing to think about the next time you go in to talk to this person is one of the next steps to consider is how can you keep it neutral? If the conversation was successful, as much as possible, you don't want to treat that person like they're the bad kid still, right? Like they're still in trouble. And if you're not sure, it wasn't really a success, wasn't really a failure, it'll depend how they act now. Think about approaching any future interactions like they're a science project. You're going to watch what they do and see. Try to be in any future information. There's the acronym is BIF. Be brief, informative, friendly, and firm. So future conversations, brief, informative, friendly, and firm. You're not going to act like we're besties now. I'm not going to act like you're going to control every word that they say. You're going to make sure the statements you make are brief and informative. If you need to give them a direction, you're going to be firm. Yeah, I like this. Selena, good point. A peer ended up calling out after having conversations with their supervisor because it was so stressful for her. Let's keep in mind that doing something hard is hard. That's maybe the stupidest way I've ever phrased it, but it's just true. So give yourself time to recover if you need to. Don't think about it like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling badly. I shouldn't feel bad about it. If you feel bad about it, feel bad about it. That's okay. Let yourself have your feelings. One thing to think about, you may have encountered this before. This is called Rahim's Organizational Conflict Inventory. Before I get into this, I want to emphasize that there is no right or wrong way to be on this. There are positives and negatives to every single kind of, BIFF, I see this, what was the other F? Brief, informative, firm, and friendly. The organizational conflict inventory, there is no wrong way to be, right? There's positives and negatives to each type of conflict style. So no one is allowed to. You do not have my permission to look at this and go, I'm doing it wrong. I'm a problem. I should be a different type. But I want you to think about when you go into these conflict or these critical conversations, especially if it's a one-to-one situation, you and someone else, what you are and what they are. So for example, let me just pull up really here. Okay, so an integrating person, someone up here in the upper left, they're very collaborative between different parties. They want to reach mutual and acceptable solution, exchange information, exploration of differences, a constructive solution. Someone who's obliging will sacrifice their personal concerns to satisfy the other person's concerns. So the most important thing there is that we stop having this conflict. We are no longer fighting. That is the most important thing there. Non-confrontational will minimize the differences, emphasize commonalities. It may look like selflessness. It may look like obedience. That does not mean someone who is selfless, obedient, does not mean they actually agree with you. So if you go in and talk to someone and say, hey, you need to do X, Y, Z, and they're like, you might not actually see a change in their behavior. They might be acquiescing to what you're all saying to get out of the conversation. Humans do what humans do, right? And if you find yourself softening your message a lot, that might be something you're doing as well. I'm trying so hard to show my concern for you, the person I'm talking to, that I am lowering and reducing my concerns for myself and what I want. Avoiding, the bottom right here, you don't satisfy your own personal concerns, or they don't, or the concern of the other person. They may withdraw or sidestep, postpone an issue to a better time, or just avoid, withdraw from the threatening situation. They might refuse to acknowledge the conflict, that the conflict is even happening. Dominating, bottom left, high concern for self, low concern for other. They push for their own needs and concerns, less likely to consider the needs and concerns of the other party, and they'll defend their own personal positions that they believe are correct and right. So this person is absolutely not going to soften their feedback, but they're not necessarily considering where the other person is coming from. In the middle, square middle here, is compromising. It's kind of intermediate for everyone. So it's a give and take, sharing solutions. Everyone gives something up to make mutually acceptable decisions, splitting the difference, concessions, middle ground, all of those things. And for those who are looking at that going, well, obviously there's a good one. It's the one that's exactly in the middle. That one takes a long time. It takes a long time, and it takes multiple parties who are willing to compromise. One person being willing to compromise and the other one being dominating, the dominating person is going to get more of their way in the discussion that comes out. So there are absolutely negatives to compromise as well, the compromising conflict style as well. Please don't think any one thing is right or wrong, etc. But know where you come from and know where they come from. If you and the person you're talking to are both dominating, how do we avoid it getting aggressive and escalating? If you and the person we're talking to are both avoiding, congratulations, first of all, if you manage to get both of you into that meeting, that's a win. But how do you avoid just talking about how Kathy's going to retire and isn't it great and who's ordering the cake? How do you actually stay on topic? And if you are opposites, if if you're more of an obliging and they're more of a dominating or an integrating, how do you, as Jennifer says in the chat here, keep your message firm but kind, and avoid softening it too much, and the message getting completely lost. I'm actually, Jennifer, that's so timely. I'm going to address that here. How do we avoid softening the message, staying firm, and not softening the message too much and getting lost? First of all, I love that you use the word kind. Kind and nice are not synonyms. Sometimes the kind thing is not the nice thing. Telling someone you were interrupting people during that meeting and it made everyone want to not listen to you doesn't feel nice, but it is kind. Because I think it was James that said earlier, like sometimes they honestly don't know that what they're doing is upsetting. And if that's the case, oh boy, did you just give that person a huge advantage. They didn't know. They were upsetting everyone and they didn't know. And you just gave them that knowledge. And that's so kind. So remembering that being firm, keeping your message, thinking ahead of time about what you absolutely have to say and what your goal outcomes are, and sticking to that isn't mean. Kind can feel mean, especially if you are a person who would basically rather pull out their own hair than have a confrontation. Also, that this isn't your only go at it. That can be frustrating going into it too. Like, I got to do this stressful thing and I don't want to. And now you're telling me that I'm going to have to do it multiple times. But if you were kind and firm, you said, you need to stop interrupting people in meetings. You need to stop biting everyone's head off when they ask you questions. It is okay for them to ask you questions. If you later feel, even if they didn't seem to get the message, even if you feel like it was because you were too soft, there's another opportunity to say, Jim Bob, we talked about this. That is too aggressive. I need you to soften your tone. Even if you feel like part of the reason they didn't get it is you were too soft. It's another opportunity to say it. It's another opportunity to be firm. So if you think about it, like, I don't have to get this right once. If I get it a little wrong, I'm going to be able to adjust. It's going to be okay. Awesome. Good question. All right. Emotional hijack. You are a human being. Emotions are part of your meat sack body. One of the things that happened, conflict can be stressful and it can be risky because we may feel threatened. Your brain responds to stressful and threatening situations. It changes its function in stressful and threatening situations. Your stupid monkey brain does not know the difference between Jim Bob is being aggressive and I am going to be eaten by a tiger. So your body reacts this. We've heard fight, flight, freeze. That's what your body responds the same way to both things. So remembering that when you are in a stressful or threatening situation, the part of you that does your best thinking doesn't do its best work. It can shut down. And more of your brain's activity is registered in a more primitive fight or flight portion of your brain. So emotional hijack happens because you are a human person. So thank you, Patricia. I appreciate the reference. You are not bad or wrong for responding this way. But as much as you can fight it, you can fight it. And that's part of preparing helps. Even if, and things do pop up, you can't necessarily do that. You can't necessarily always prep, but preparing in general for what kind of bad situation might happen will allow you to tap into the work your past self has done instead of leaning into monkey brain, which is saying, I'm going to get eaten, better attack, or better run away. So let's talk about defensive coping strategies. I'm going to put some of these up here. Drop in the chat which ones you feel, which ones you find yourself using. Which of these look kind of terrifyingly familiar to you? Personally, high charge of energy in the body. I find myself sitting forward. I get sweaty. I feel hot when I'm in, especially when it's an unexpected critical conversation. Is there a possibility of freeze? Yeah, that's the opposite of like withdrawing back, and the opposite. So some people jump forward and are like hot and angry, and some people drop back. And I'm doing this with my body. It actually happens with your body physically sometimes. And you feel cold. You feel like ice goes through your veins, your veins. Kristen, great point. Understand that certain disabilities will make hijacking more pervasive and harder control. That is absolutely true. And I'm giving you 5 GovLoop Next Gen points. They're worth nothing, but they're yours. Good insight. Withdrawing into silence, speaking too fast. High charge energy. Patricia and I, we feel too hot. Too fast. Inappropriate laughing. Yes. Being just silent. Magnifying everything. Personalizing everything. Trivializing with humor, which is hilarious. Someone said, I lose all humor. I can't, nothing is funny. Another person is inappropriately smiling, making jokes, laughing, interrupting, being too nice, can't think straight, sarcasm, personalizing everything, endlessly explaining, feeling stiff. I love that. Wanting to be right, can't think straight, the sudden drop in IQ. Yes. And that's knowing that your body is doing that. Your brain has been like, we are in danger, time to stop thinking and go back to this fight, flight, or freeze brain. The sudden drop in IQ is not imagined. Your body is like, time to get stupid and strong and fast. Patricia, I love this phrasing. My fight, flight is always on fight. Other people feel the same way. My fight, flight always seems to be on flight or always seems to be on freeze. I never seem to get into fight. It's important to know those things about yourself because for another person, for someone who is kind of stuck in freeze, suddenly feeling that they're in fight mode, that's meaningful and they should probably actually fight because they don't. Whereas for Patricia and I, we're always fighting. So if I suddenly feel like I need to flee, I should flee. That's a good sign. That I should listen to that. Whereas if I need to fight, that's just Tuesday and my brain is telling me I need to fight. That's just what always happens. I love all of these almost simultaneously. Jerica, nice. You're great work. Oh my goodness. Everyone's doing so. If it's intense, sometimes I feel childlike. Yes. Yes. Sometimes you feel like rabbit holing, stopping breathing. Okay. So the chat just flooded. We all do these things when our brains are emotionally hijacked. So does the other person. So do they. So do they. For all values of they. Yes, even the person you absolutely hate, who you cannot tolerate and you can barely see any of their interactions as having any sort of validity at all. They also do these things. These can be a sign. If you can give yourself space when you feel these things, do. If you can give them space when you see these things, do. To say, we forgot the ostrich. To say, okay, you know, we're in this conversation. Ashley, you didn't get the promotion. I'm so sorry. And I had prepared ahead of time. I'm feeling pretty good, right? We're going to have this conversation. And I'm like, so now knowing that you're not getting this promotion, how do you want to move forward? And all of a sudden I see like she's kind of murmuring and saying words that don't make sense, giggling a lot. I might be like, oh, she might be in a defensive place and be like, I'll tell you what, let's take some time to think about this. I'm going to release you. I'm going to free you from a situation that is so stressful that your body is hijacked. But you don't need to say that. To be like, why don't we have a conversation like next week after we've had some time to process? Because I want to make sure I'm helping you as much as I can, even though you have not gotten this promotion. So you have these, knowing what these things are for yourself. And honestly, like this is back to my coachee who wanted to retire and was worried she'd get pressured. Like when we talk about these things, like if you feel, hers was explaining, when you start explaining to your boss while you need to retire, that's a sign you should hang up. Get out of the conversation. The minimum required is I am retiring at the end of June. And here are some triggers that you should just eject. Like pull the rope and shoot out of your seat and let the parachute go because you've done the bare minimum you needed to do in that conversation and it's okay to try it again later. All right, let's talk about how to manage yourself. How to manage yourself when you're feeling that hijack, when you're getting emotionally hijacked here. Notice it, first of all. Now that this is part of, actually, I love this. I've told my boss I'm having a fight or flight day and I'm not able to understand words. So if you need to have a conversation with me now, I'm gonna have a ton of questions later. I apologize for this. Anyone who ever watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there's a scene at the end of one of the seasons where there's just been a huge emotional battle. And Buffy says to her mentor, she's like, I can't really process higher level emotions now. I'm kind of like fire bad, tree pretty. And then later he gives some big question and she looks at him and goes, fire bad, tree pretty. He goes, yeah, sorry, later. So yes, if you have a person to whom you can love, your boss also points to your boss, someone to whom you can be like, I am in fire bad, tree pretty now. Can we talk about this later? Because this is all I can do. This is all I got. That's okay. I love this. So part of the reason I put up that whole list and I made you write them in the chat is notice when this is happening to you. When this is happening to you, the best thing you can do to this is to allow yourself to experience it and give yourself space to not have to do that higher level thinking when you are literally physically incapable of it. Accepting what you're feeling there. Detaching from over-identifying. The issue, concern, or problem is not you. It's is it you? Like, oh God, I'm going to have to, I can't have this conversation because I suck. Is that why? Is that why you can't have this conversation? Or is it because you're a human being and you're stressed and you have had no time to prepare and this person responds to things in a way that distresses you? And I want to be clear, a person responding to things in a way that distresses you could be that this person is very aggressive and you get very defensive and or if you are a person who wants to directly confront the problem and they stonewall or avoid, that can also be responding in a way that distresses you. Just because it isn't aggressive doesn't mean it doesn't distress you. If you're in fight or flight and the other thing runs away and you can't fight, that's distressing. Your brain is telling you to hit and it's not there to hit. Absolutely true, Patricia. It's only good to be fire bad, tree pretty with your boss if your boss has that foundation of safety, right? Safety. If you're not in that situation, I hereby give you permission to tell a white lie. I have another meeting I need to get to. My Wi-Fi is not working. I need to be off camera today. I just got a call from my spouse. Anything, if you need to do those things because you need breathing room and it's not safe to say I need breathing room, you may tell a white lie. You have my permission. I accidentally got to defy there, confronting your negative self-talk. Not every bad thing that happens is your fault. just like not everything good that happens is your doing. If you are not willing, if you are a person who is not willing to give yourself credit for every single good thing that happens around you, I hereby tell you, you are not allowed to take responsibility for every bad thing that happens around you. And vice versa. If you're going to take credit for every good thing that happens around you, then you also need to take credit for every problem. It's an all or nothing thing, baby. It's probably not all or nothing. It's probably in between. Slow down. Pause. Take a break. Walk. Count backwards. If you are, like me, also a fight person, and you've been here your whole life, take a deep breath and count to 10, and now you have a fight response to that phrase. Instead of that, I encourage you, I'm going to give you the thing that actually worked for me, which is avoid saying what you're thinking long enough to think of 2 other things to say. I'm not saying don't say it. I'm not saying don't yell or argue. I am saying whatever mean thing popped to the top of your head, take long enough to think of 2 more things to say. And by the time you've thought of 3 options, you're probably not as mad. Change up your usual response. If you're usually a sarcastic comeback person, instead ask a question. Instead of explaining, make yourself be quiet and listen. Instead of closing down, open up and tell other people how you say. If you are a person, yes, worst thing to do is tell me to calm down. Never in the history of calming down has saying calm down ever calmed anyone down. If you're trying to ratchet me down, I'm going to ratchet 4 or 5 up, just out of spite. Okay, if you, and I name you for number 6 here, I encourage you to name what you're doing. To be like, okay, usually I get pretty sarcastic when I'm stressed, and I'm trying to avoid that right now. So instead, please know this is an honest question, and ask a clarifying question. If you are a person who over-explains, don't explain what you're doing because you'll over-explain it. Instead, if you have a beverage, take a drink. You can't talk while you're drinking water. So if you find you'll be like, I can explain why this is, I need to give you 14 to 18 well-vetted reasons for why it's okay that I did this. Just drink water and let the other person talk. If you can't drink water, reach into your pack, your purse, your notebook, whatever, and look for something. Very aggressively look for something. Find something, do something to keep your face and your mouth, if you can, but your face and your hands busy so that you have to wait. If you close down, opening up and telling people how you feel, if it's safe, if not, even say, I don't want to seem closed. I want to make sure that I'm giving you my honest response here. Even if you can't say, like, I close down when I'm distressed. Checking your assumptions. Oh, okay. Practicing 10. I'm going to skip down to practicing 10, 10, 10. This goes to not beating yourself up, right? Someone said earlier, what if I'm trying to say, I'm trying to be firm but kind, and I'm worried I'm over softening your message. Think about what is, this really emphasizes to me that you have more than one chance of this. The consequences of what you do in 10 minutes, if you're too soft in a message, are very minimal. The consequences of your actions in 10 minutes, if you punch a dude, pretty bad, right? So whichever action has the least negative consequences in 10 minutes, but think 10 months, think 10 years. Sometimes putting that in perspective to be like, he's mad at me in this conversation. I didn't decide that he wouldn't get promoted. I'm just the one who has to tell him this, but he's mad at me. It feels bad. It sucks. And you don't feel like a good person. But knowing that in 10 years, he's not going to be mad at you for not getting promoted can help. All right. I'm going to jump ahead and then I'm going to go back and get you questions. So let's talk about it takes 2 here. This is a classic statement. It takes 2 to tango. Any sort of conflict that you're in, there is more than one person. Now, it takes 2 to tango may not mean that both of you are equally responsible or even that both of you are responsible at all. But there are 2 of you there. Destructive responses. Destructive responses during conflict or critical conversations are, guess what? Destructive. They're bad. They're not helpful. They're not getting us anywhere. And I think this is really helpful to me because I think it shows that just because you're not yelling doesn't mean you're not being destructive. So avoiding can be a destructive response. Yielding, letting the other person have their entire way, hiding your emotions so that they don't know you're actually upset, but then you're upset later. Criticizing yourself too much is a destructive response. When the person you're talking to or you are trying to win, at all costs. When you're raising your voice, using angry words, laughing at someone else, being sarcastic. Again, it's not just a defensive response, it can be a destructive response. If they retaliate or passively obstruct the other person, these can be responses that they do not get us over this critical conversation, and they extend the damage. So when you're in with this person, think about whether they are responding to this conflict by showing a destructive response. Think about whether you are sliding into a destructive response. So, and this is also very helpful. This, I think, is the most helpful thing for when it's a pop-up. You don't have any time to prepare. It all of a sudden happens. Are you seeing any of these things? Is this person, and again, my fictional Jim Bob, who bites someone's head off every single time they ask a question in a meeting, might be winning, definitely displaying anger, might be demeaning others. So that gives you some ideas to go into when you actually can have the conversation in the moment. Again, thinking about what is 10, 10, 10, what is going to happen in the next 10 minutes? The best thing I could do is say, hey, you're yelling right now, and that's not appropriate. We can talk about this later. For right now, Ashley asked a legitimate question, and I'm going to need you to answer it. That's an okay, you don't have to address the entirety of the issue in that moment. We've stopped the destructive behaviors, or we've said something about the destructive behaviors, and we're moving on. And then later going into it, going like, okay, if they're sarcastic, if they're trying to win, what might be the root of that? What are they thinking? What are they coming into this with, et cetera? And that helps you settle out all those things that you want to have before you actually have that critical conversation. It's kind of clues to what's behind them. Similarly, if we got someone more on the free side who's, you ask a question and they immediately are like, oh, of course, absolutely. Whatever you think, whatever you say, that's totally fine. And then they look down the whole time and you're like, I feel like that was yielding and then that's hiding emotions. I wonder if they're very actually upset. There may be a critical conversation you wouldn't have seen because they didn't yell like Jim Bob did. You didn't necessarily know that they needed to have it. Alrighty.
So I hate to interrupt, but we are almost to the end here, and we need to do that poll for our CPE friends.
Let me, Okay, here we go. Let's do this poll. I'm going to keep this up here. And then I'm going to, while we're talking about this poll, please answer the poll so you can get your PPE credits. When these emotions or reactions, especially defensive reactions, are popping up, here are some ways you can allow someone to vent a little bit. You can remain silent and not react to venting. This is more appropriate in a person-to-person as opposed to a big group situation where everyone has to deal with that venting, but letting them have a little outlet can be helpful. Get curious, give your brain something to focus on, be an active listening, think about what you can ask questions on. Try to refocus the conversation once emotions are diffused. If emotions are high, it's not necessarily a productive time to have that conversation. And set limits and boundaries when necessary. Again, we talked about what are you not going to talk about? It's okay to say, no, this isn't about Megan. This isn't about any one specific person. This is about your pattern of blah, blah, blah. If they're becoming offensive, you can say, it's not appropriate for you to yell at me like this. You are acting disrespectfully, and we're going to have to take a break from this conversation if you keep doing that. And managing your own emotions, the STOP approach is the acronym. Stop what you're saying or doing when your actions or when your emotions go high. Take 3 deep breaths, observe how you are feeling, and then proceed. All right, let's look at this quiz. All right, upper management is the hardest, it says. And then it's almost equal with peers, direct reports, and your direct supervisor. I'm going in to looking at some of the questions we didn't answer on. Dealing with a response you weren't expecting at all. It is okay, especially if emotions are high, to be like, whoa, what the heck? We're going to have to come back to this. I did not expect this. I'm going to see if I can put this up here. It's okay to say, let's come back to this when we're at a time where we're less fraught. It's okay to give them a little bit of time to vent. I like this too. Here's another question. How do you have a conversation with someone who's older than you and views themselves as smarter than you, but you're the boss? What are the correct boundaries of this situation? Again, when we think of what do we want the outcome of this situation to be, being clear on what is and is not appropriate? What do we expect? What are the next steps? So it's not just saying, you're not just giving them information that the way they're behaving is inappropriate. You are telling them, I understand that you are older than me and you have a lot of experience, but I am your boss. And when I ask you to do X, Y, Z, I need you to do X, Y, Z. And then what will be the repercussions of that behavior if it continues? Okay, let me see. What other
I think that's actually all the time that we have, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I know, we had such great feedback and questions. So thank you to everyone who was participating so avidly. And thank you, Mel, for all of your advice. I know that everyone has some great takeaways from this session, and you can also, again, get the slides if you would like to flip through those, and you will get a recording of this session as well to go back and listen to. So thank you so much for the wonderful insights and energy. Thank you to our 2023 Next Gen Partner Alliance for helping us put on today's Next Gen Summit. So I do have a few quick reminders before we scoot out of here. Don't forget to fill out your CPE evaluation to get your credit. You took all the polls, you did all the work, get the credit. And if you haven't already, make sure to head over to the exhibit hall to check out our amazing booth. There's a lot of good information and resources there as well. So up next is our closing keynotes. They're at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can access that session through the conference hall in the main environment. We're going to hear 2 presentations. Unconventional Past, Gov leaders share their journeys and find the passion for what you want to do. So thank you so much again. We'll see you in the final session, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you all.